Hello and welcome to this special end of the week edition of the Swim Brief. I'm joined, as always, by Erik Wiken. You're on the road this week, right, Erik? So you're not in your.
I am.
You're not in your Houston area bat cave.
That's correct. I am in your favorite Midwestern city. I am in Omaha.
Yeah, love Omaha.
Yep. I'm here visiting a couple of teams. And for those of you who don't know me particularly well, I have hearing problems. So I have hearing aids, and my hearing aid doctor is actually in Lincoln, where I used to coach. So visiting teams and taking care of business.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I suspect when you find a good doctor for that sort of thing, you just stay with them.
Since I only have to see him once every 6 months. So it's like,
yeah.
So no, doing pretty well. Enjoying my digs for this couple of days.
Plus, I live up here in the Northeast. Like, all that stuff's really close to each other, right? Texas, Nebraska, and it's just kind of like
I mean, from Houston to Omaha, it's a short 12-hour drive. So.
You just take the Acela up, right? The high-speed train. Yeah. And it's
we have one of those. Yep.
Right. All right. So Joel, unfortunately, could not join us. He's actually attending a Norm Macdonald memorial event in Ottawa, Ontario. So and the connection was really bad. So he's unable to make it. We're just going to have to soldier on without Joel this week. So we want to talk about, as we joked, I'm going to react to you reacting to Caeleb Dressel reacting to his own 100 free at the Olympics. Because I've heard that what really works well for the algorithm is reaction. So I thought, if we could pile a lot of layers of reaction all in one video, that maybe it'd really sort of pump up this stuff. So that's what we're going to try. And then we're going to talk about a bit of athlete movement. It's sort of the season for picking a new place to train, or maybe not picking a new place to train, but sticking in the same place for a while and all that kind of stuff. Some really notable athletes. We're going to get into that piece. And then in a callback to earlier days, Erik and I have prepared monologues for the end. Something that we used to do and then inexplicably just stopped doing. And today we're going to bring it back. So here you go. But first, let's get to this Dressel stuff. I think, we love to consume this type of content. You got 14 minutes of Caeleb Dressel sitting down, talking about training, really. I mean, he goes on to all sorts of areas in this, not just the 100 free itself at the Olympics. He said a few things that made me feel bad about some topics that I harp on, but let me get to your reaction first to watching this Caeleb Dressel reaction video.
It was my first reacts. I know he's done a couple of other ones in the past, and I've seen some interviews. I've been being a part of the Speedo world. I've seen some other conversations and seen some of things. So you're getting Caeleb like in his element in terms of just the kind of the person he is. There's a little bit of squirrel action going here. There's a little bit of bounce around kind of stuff, which is just him. And I love that it's such a natural thing to be able for him to do and to love to do. So we're getting an insight into the mind of an athlete and seeing some of the harsh criticism of himself. He's really tough on some of the things that he does or doesn't do well. And the one thing that overall, I guess my biggest takeaway is that this is something that we need to see more of, just from a standpoint of thinking it like a coach, just being able to share athlete-friendly content to some of your athletes, like them being able to hear one of the top athletes talk about things that they don't do well. And on top of that, not having an answer for it. Like, he doesn't have an answer for his turn. just not taking that last stroke. And like, it's like, I don't know what I did. I have no idea why. I don't know why I did it. It's terrible. Like, look at me go up and then down. And just, it's reassuring to kids who are not doing what they think is well, and see somebody who's at the pinnacle making rookie mistakes, like not taking that last stroke into the wall in the biggest final of your life. Like, even they have instances where they don't do that particularly well. And we didn't see that with Michael Phelps, because he has a history of long turns in his biggest races and still being able to do it. But there's never been this dissection of it. And then like you said, he gets into what he does every day in terms of practicing his finish. His time happened to be like 16 meters without a breath on that last 50, and seemingly like that was probably 1 meter too many. He could have maybe started that earlier, but I digress. I shouldn't be coaching like some of the other people in threads.
That's right. We're going to get to that. Yeah,
we're going to get to it. But I like I said, I love it. I think I would love to see more athletes go ahead and get into it and share this kind of content, and to get into the mind of an athlete. Because no matter how much you coach, no matter how much you're on deck and seeing these things and having experiences with your athletes, you're not really in it as a coach. Maybe you've never done the last 15 meters of 100, no breath, or maybe you don't know what it's like to have to finish the back end of a 34 100 set where you're trying to go some kind of pace. Like, just you write it, but you don't necessarily prescribe it for yourself. It's just it's good for everybody to see this kind of thing and learn from it. So
yeah. I mean, I was struck listening to it. The biggest thing that stood out to me is that probably the biggest disappointment for me of the Phelps Lochte era was you had two guys who were just so incredible, and they were doing so many incredible things, and yet we never really heard from them in a thoughtful way about how they were doing it whatsoever. No. I mean, and I had got my first experience with this when I was covering 2008 Olympic trials as media, and Garrett and I would agonize over, like, what are we going to try to ask Phelps? What are we going to try to ask Lochte in these, mixed zone interviews?
And they're giving you nothing.
And they gave you nothing. It would be like, you'd ask them some deep question. They'd be like, I don't know. Michael would be like, I don't know. I do what Bob says. You just go like, oh.
Yeah, that's the other one is, I don't know. I just do what Great Choice says.
Right. And I don't know, I have heard from many people, and I would gather that like they're certainly more thoughtful than that. So it was almost like a coach thing. They just didn't really want to get into it in an interview, which was fair enough, but like too bad for the rest of us. And this is absolutely wonderful to be able to see something like this. To get into a really specific thing that I noticed is I've been on this podcast criticizing Rowdy Gaines a lot for always screaming about reaction times. And so when I got to the part of the video where, he was talking about his reaction time and how much Coach Troy gets on him for reaction time and stuff, I had to like reconsider. I had to go like, oh, I guess there are some contexts. And how I rationalized it to myself is, here we have a swimmer who is extremely consistent the way he executes the fundamentals of all other parts of his start. Like he gets a good drive, he adjusts himself in the air, has a wonderful entry. So for him, reaction time is quite important, actually, because that's sort of the difference. If everything is going to be equal on the other end, fine. Then yes, it's a free 5/100ths if he's 0.61 instead of 0.66. And as he pointed out quite clearly, he needed.
He won by that difference in reaction.
That's right.
Time.
That's right. He needed all those hundredths at the end of this race because, as you said, he executed a lot of things really well, but he made a couple of big mistakes in Olympic final, and still was able to come through. Now let's pivot, because you teased the online coaching. What do you think? First, do you have the comment handy that set you off? Because if you're able to pull that up, I mean, the question I have for you, I guess, is I want to know, what do you think motivates people to watch a video like this and then give like the sort of most basic possible or just annoying advice in a comment? I know that this is like one of our things where we always give a hard time to people that are making comments, but here, go ahead. I think you got it now.
I've got it. I don't know necessarily showing it. I could try to, speed read it. It's like, I'll speed read it. Okay. Looked like he stopped kicking during his last pull and glide into the turn that happened on the opening 4x1 relay 2. Since Dressel tends to glide into his flip turns, I think he could pick up some time by keeping the kick going all the way into the wall, and maybe also by getting his head and upper body submerged. Think Agnell on the opening turn of London in 200. That actually did happen. I remember that clip. Or Murphy on the last turn of the Rio 200 back. Like, the first thing I think of when I see this is, and shout out to Joel, is always his go-to comment is like going back to like the coach's idea exchange page where somebody just chimes in on like fixing a technique. Somebody puts out a video, help this kid, and he's like, we'll just do 12-25 fingertip drag. I ought to iron out that problem real quick, I don't know what motive. I think I legitimately think there's like the intent here is super like innocent.
Sure.
Like positive. Like there's no part of this person that thinks that they're just being a knucklehead. The fact that they're referencing specific races and specific situations. They're into it. I can close my eyes and see that turn that Agnell did at opening because I played it at practice a bunch of times. Like just see him submerge and press and then get into that turn. But it's like, it's one of those things where I thought about replying. I was like, nah, but you just see like he's getting ratioed. Like his negative votes to positive votes is like 3 or 4 to 1, right? It's like, did you watch the video on mute? Like he spends 3 solid minutes just berating himself on what he's doing, like slowing it down. Like, you see this, you see me going up. What the hell is that? It's like, he's got it. He figures it out. He knows he's doing these things. We don't need to just, and Dressel's not going to hit the thread on Swim Swam for your, technical advice. There's no pro coming in and being like, I wonder what Anon user 25791 thinks about my 100 freestyle turn.
But we do know that Greg Troy gets all of his coaching information from the Swim Swam comment section. That's of course. A lot of people.
How do you think Dressel got so big?
A lot of people don't know this, but that's kind of been his secret for the last 10 years. How he's continued to build on his career is to keep it fresh. He goes right to the Swim Swam comment section, and filters by. I don't know. I'm sorry. That just I couldn't sustain it. I guarantee you. I can almost guarantee you. I think I've heard this here in the office that Greg Troy doesn't ever visit Swim Swam. Like doesn't even go and read the news there. I bet somebody else. Sure. I bet somebody else around him if there's anything he needs to know on there. They're just telling him in person.
Yeah, but just filters it. But he
has the advantage of being a 70-plus-year-old man.
Yeah.
And I'm so jealous of those guys who can just go like, you know what? I'm just not going to engage with the internet. I'm good.
I just, I look at it and say, come on now. I mean, the fact that some of this stuff just gets posted, is it trying to have a talking point? Are you saying it to help other coaches and other swimmers think about it? Are you putting it out there to make yourself sound intellectual, but that you don't actually attach your name to the comment? So I don't see the end game other than feeding your own ego in that moment to make yourself feel like you've got the answer, which if you've ever had any amount of therapy, you shouldn't need to do. Your thoughts and your thoughts and opinions are valid as they are. You don't need to put them on the internet. for them to be real.
That's right. Right. You could just write them. You could just write them in your journal. You can just sit down and go, I think Caeleb Dressel should keep kicking into his walls.
Equally as valid.
That's right.
We don't need to share it anonymously in a swim swam thread like anybody's actually going to read it and name Caeleb Dressel or Greg Troy.
This is a good idea. Swim Swam should email out diaries to all their commenters, and then just like
fill this out
instead of the comments. This is if they really wanted to reform what they were doing. Instead of writing comments, you could make it look just like the forum online, and you could comment into it, and then it just, it would be like, oh, it's awaiting moderation, but it would just stay. So this is just a genius plan we stumbled upon, Erik. Yeah. I think we're going to really change the world with this.
And I think about this comment. It's funny because I got in the pool that I swim regularly. So I got in the pool thinking about this comment, and like actually I'm going through my swim and obviously not having any kind of Olympic final to worry about floating into my freestyle turns.
Sure.
Just thinking about this comment, thinking about the backstroke, like, you kick in, it's a different turn all entirely. So bringing up Murphy relative to the 100 free turn, completely different situation. If you're a backstroker, you've got to maintain your legs because they bend towards the bottom. Freestyle, they don't. But just forgetting the fact that you have to sometimes alter your like instantaneous velocity in those moments. Just thinking about it, like there are times where you have to turn your legs off, just where you are in those incremental distances close to the wall. Like there are times like if I didn't turn my legs off, I'd crash and slam my heels onto the gutter. So it's like, it's just funny that like in the thinking about this comment over and over again that day and that morning and just being like, you have to make some adjustments like this. That turn was ugly as hell, but at the same time, he thought he was at the wall. At the same time, it's like, if he has sometimes, like I said, sometimes you have to stop your kick if you want to hit the wall exactly the way that you need to. And that comes with thousands of hours of practice, which
sometimes you're in the Olympic final, you're all jacked up on adrenaline, you're swimming faster than you ever have in your entire life.
Yeah.
And you don't know how to measure the space between where you are and the wall because you've never been in that situation ever.
If you've never been that fast, your stroke count where you think you would take that last stroke to be, you're at a different spot in the pool than you ever have been. And that's the thing that people forget. Like if you've never been as fast as you are in that moment, whether you're Caeleb Dressel or an age grouper, if you've never been faster than you are in that best time, so you don't know what the velocity is. It's like going from a practice suit to a tech suit and working on hitting a 15-meter breakout. Yeah. If you've been doing 15-meter breakouts in a brief for months, and then you throw on a brand new tech suit,
by the way,
first one, you're probably going 16 meters.
RIP drag suits. When did drag suits die, Erik? We need another podcast.
I still have mine from college, but
you're probably
really drag.
you're probably on the young end of people that wore drag suits. I mean, I wore a drag suit too, but I'm having a hard time finding anyone even in their early 30s that trained in a drag suit. It seems like it died off. Anyway, let's talk about some of these swimmers who are changing location. And I want to lead off with one because it's, I guess, in a certain way, near and dear to me. My old stomping grounds, Georgia Tech, is getting a real live international elite swimmer to train there. And I think that's tremendously exciting. And to add to it, something that I want to consult the history books as to whether somebody has ever gone from the University of Georgia to Georgia Tech. Like, this is unprecedented. This is the dawn of a new era. Okay, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but this is a major thing. Melanie Margalis, I should say, joining Georgia Tech. It seems like the motivating factor is Michael Normant, who before coaching at Georgia Tech was, in addition to being a University of Georgia swimmer, he was a club coach in the Atlanta area. And I'm gathering from all of this that he still has some ties to his old club program, and that there's going to be some part of this where she's training at Metro Atlanta Aquatic Club. So a lot going on here. You got anything to add on the Margalis front?
I think it's great. I think I'm starting to, as we're seeing more and more of this, that athletes are just trying something different. And too often we get stuck in this. I've seen it at a much lower level, obviously, sticking with a program because you're supposed to. You don't just jump ship because stuff's not working. But after a while, if stuff's not working, you need to make a change. Like there's sometimes, you see kids who move to a program, again, seeing it at a lower level, who move to a program, it's not the right fit, but the ego isn't there. The ego is too big to just admit that you've made a poor decision, and then you watch them finish out their high school career crying at every major meet and then not swimming at college because that experience is so bad. It's not, she was having a tremendous amount of success at UGA, just having, phenomenal in-season swims. Didn't line up at trials. She wasn't the only one that didn't have the trials meet that she wanted or expected to have. It sucks, but it just happened to be that weekend that it wasn't good. But just seeing her make this move, and like we saw with Ledecky, now we're seeing with Leah Smith moving to Austin. It's just like there are, and then the Aussie duo, McEwen and Bronte. I think that's Campbell number 2 for some of those who are aware of that kind of thing.
Yeah,
like people
there's two Campbells. Yeah.
Yes, number 1 and number 2. Bronte being number 2, the younger, and in seeing all these moves and then thinking about Margalis, you just, what the hell? Like if it's calculated, you thought it through, you've got the support system there, you've got your head on your shoulders, everything is lining up. Just do it and be comfortable with it, and just, not to say that like what's the worst that could happen. There's plenty of things that could be bad in terms of a swimming career change like that, but maybe there's just more of a realization that it is super important, but at the end of the day, it still only is swimming. She's a grounded enough human being to see that she's comfortable with making decisions. She's obviously, trials sucked, but she didn't seem to be wholly devastated. She was on social media, liking all these posts and commenting and supporting all of her team and teammates. She seems like an amazing human being, and it just continued. She seemed to get over trials and just jump right into the teammate that she's always been. And so it doesn't surprise me that she's like, it's just swimming. Let's just go with it. Let's try it. And if it doesn't work out, I'm still Melanie Margalis. This doesn't define who I am as a person. It's great to see people do that and not just continuing to beat their head against a wall because that's where they've always been. Looking at some of our older national team members who refuse to go somewhere else that might actually help them.
Or Michael Andrew, please try and train somewhere else. Sorry, I just had that was my Michael Andrew PSA. I had to sneak in there.
Yeah, you don't even need to deviate that far from USRPT.
No,
just go somewhere else for a bit.
Just get a little bit of input from somebody. So there's a couple things here, on this broader theme of picking a place to train when you're an elite athlete. And look, I've not coached all the way up to that level, right? So everybody can take my opinion for what it's worth, but I've observed some elite training environments, and I would say there's a couple of factors here that I think are really important. One of which I would be concerned with on Margalis's front, and that is, you want some other people, you want a critical mass of other people who are sort of going for the same thing. I think that's what plays into a lot of these elite groups that sprout sort of around a high level college team, that you have some other people hanging around that you can train with. Now, I don't know, enough about what's going on at Georgia Tech could be that some of those international guys who've been so successful for them are, you know, sticking around doing fifth years, whatever, finding some way to hang around in the Atlanta area. And if so, that would certainly change the equation for her in terms of people to train with. But I actually think there's a sweet spot for that number of people. Like and I've observed probably the best example of this, in my opinion, in the last, I don't know, 15 years was USC. It seemed at one point that literally like every elite swimmer that changed their location at one point, like I think kind of more in the lead up to Rio, would just switch to USC, and you're like trying to go like, how many kids
adding it up?
You start adding it up and you think like,
giant senior group.
Are there 40 international caliber swimmers training at? That's too many. I do think there's an aspect of this where, you know, if you're all the way up at that level, it's very resource intensive, the kind of coaching and prep that you need. I've talked about being self-centered. That's on the athlete end, but on the other end of it, you need resources to be self-centered about, right? You need a lot. And you need to be able to draw. And I think when you get into an environment that's so super big, like nobody has enough resources to adequately support a group of, 40 international swimmers.
And if you're a coach of 40 international swimmers, there are not enough hours in the week for you to be able to give them all the equal attention that they would deserve, because regardless of what level they are on, their swimming is most important to them. So it doesn't matter if they're just trying to make a trials cut, or they're trying to make an A cut for their country, or they're on the US national team trying to make our team. It's like, it's the same amount of intensive hours. And to your point with the Georgia Tech move, I wonder in some ways that, like you said, the people that are sticking around, is it a situation for her that is, obviously it's not that far away of a move from UGA. Atlanta is rich with resources just in terms of city life, being able to do everything. It's a major hub. Does she have the same type of training situation that kind of Ledecky fell into, in terms of those on the men's side relative to her best times and her training speeds, versus Ledecky is now training arguably the best male distance group in the country in Florida, in Gainesville? Is she found a similar situation like that with the right, maybe not the best IMers, but the right mix of personalities and demeanor at practice, to where she feels super comfortable training in that environment? And you can't go wrong with that facility. You can't go wrong with its proximity to everything that Atlanta has to offer. Like, there's so much going for being there.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I would hope for her sake, at least, that Kaio Pamputis, top level NCAA IMer, done some really impressive stuff internationally, at least short course. I would hope that he's sticking around. That'd be a great person to train with, and of course I'll be cheering for her. I would love to see a place like Georgia Tech. I think in many ways it is very, very well set up. At least the physical infrastructure there is really good for an elite athlete to do some training. So
if they could host the 96 Olympics there, it's got to be a decent facility.
The pools are good. The other facilities are all like really, really high level facilities. And I think, I can say even from my own time at Georgia Tech, what we always struggled with was the human infrastructure of putting in that stuff around high level athletes. And I think that if they're able to do that now, that's going to be really impressive and a really big, important step for them. Anything else to add on the swimmer movement, or are we going to get to our?
I mean, we didn't really touch on Kathleen Baker. Essentially staying home and training with NC State. It doesn't really surprise me. Dave Marsh is the kind of guy who would just be like, go here for a month, just do what you need to do, be in communication with the coaching staff there. And she explained that in an Instagram post, I think in a bit of an interview too, where it was like, clearly staying home. Like, she loves Braden's style. She's there obviously in direct communication with being on international staffs and being Dave Marsh having a lot of that exposure and being in North Carolina a bit and knowing and understanding Braden Holloway, that there's not too dissimilar of training that's going on there. And like we said, just a change of pace sometimes is good. And it doesn't seem to be a long-term thing. She talked about just being there in between what would have been a regular season for her, which she didn't swim, and then getting into the ISL playoff system or whatever it is that they have going on.
Right.
That she's just going to be training there and just being close to home and comfortable. And she's recently engaged. So there's we don't know what, long-term it is that's going to happen there, but it's just family and friends and comfortability. And it's a program that can clearly train to her strengths, being underwater, being backstroke. They've got a good backstroke group out there at NC State.
I almost feel like this is the year, Erik, that NC State has switched back to being underrated. Like they started there and they were, I think, underrated for a couple of years. And then they got, the hype machine took over. And then maybe they had a few years where they were overrated because it was like, oh, they're going to win NCAAs. And they never quite busted through. But I almost feel like it's come full circle back around.
Yeah, especially with Todd DeSorbo moving to UVA and just accelerating that in the same coast, and being so close in proximity. And
but I think NC State's looking really good.
They're back to where they want to be, though. They love that chip on the shoulder, F everybody, this is who we are. It fits them. It fits that to a T, because it's always been, man, it's NC State, what are they going to do? But just, you can feed into that and really utilize that. And Braden does a great job of utilizing that kind of mentality, because they always seem to be punching above their weight until all of a sudden it's like, oh, now they're legit. And then Cal and Texas and the like, just like, here we are.
Yeah.
You can't make one mistake around us, because you make one mistake and Cal and Texas all of a sudden beat you by 120 points at NCAA.
That's right.
You got nothing.
If you don't have the greatest swim team ever assembled, Texas will have very close to the greatest swim team ever assembled, and then they'll score 3 million points in diving, and you're screwed. And I even now we're riffing on NC State. Something that happened a few weeks ago that we didn't really get to discuss on the pod, but I was really impressed with, was the story of Noah Ponte going back home to Switzerland. It sounds to me from his post on it and just reading around the lines there that, you've got somebody that came to the US that, was just really struggling, really struggling with the transition. And I thought they handled it really well. I mean, college sports can be really cutthroat, and this is like a massive, to not have somebody of that level that you recruited swim for you. Yeah. And in terms of results, that's a massive blow, but it seems like they did everything they could, and the best thing. They
supported him the way they should have. Yeah. And that kid's life, and he said it, his life accelerated from 0 to ludicrous speed, like overnight. And she just needs time to be able to process it. Everybody's different. And it's like, they get it. What's the point in ruining this kid's future because he has to swim it with us at NC State? We're holding this over your head. Like, it's foolish. Grounded enough in their own selves to be able to allow that kid to have that.
Yeah.
So, and it leaves the door open. Like, you treat him well now, and he's like, you know what? I'm better now. I'll come back. Like, you don't shut the door on somebody of that caliber.
Or the next really fast, or a teammate of his, Switzerland is going to go.
He's going to speak super positively about the program and the support. And it's like you're doing yourself a lot of good being a human being to somebody who's struggling with real human being stuff.
All right, let's get to the final thoughts. You want to go first, or you want me to go?
Yeah,
first?
I can go first. I want you to be able to close with yours.
We're going to talk about some really exciting stuff. Here we go.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We're really getting into it. And for those of you, we kind of dance around it, whatever. I am an employee of Speedo. There are times where like there's a conflict of interest. We kind of avoid a topic, or I avoid speaking to certain things. So just want to make sure that we're being as up and up as we can as a podcast. And to wanted to speak to something, and if you want to share this with those people who are within your club or within your college. We're dealing with a huge transition at Speedo, and we're getting through it, and it takes a lot of time. Anytime you change hands from corporation to corporation, you're dealing with a lot of system changes. It's been 18 months in the making, and we're finally going live in a lot of our processes. And like anything
else been going on in those 18 months, or just world has been pretty quiet, I think.
Yeah, we've had this little worldwide pandemic that's completely shut everything down, and purchasing and things of that nature increased at a much faster rate than manufacturing was able to keep up and shipping was able to handle. So when somebody utters the phrase global supply chain management, it really kind of makes people roll their eyes and fall asleep. But the reality is that we are all dealing with some serious stuff. It is really, really difficult to get anything made and produced quickly and sent quickly. Everything is disrupted. For those of you who are dealing with people who are upset about their orders not coming in or your orders not coming through, I'm sure you've realized that we have a microchip problem throughout the entire world, and things are backlogged. They're looking at maybe 2 years before things get sorted out with microchips. You're seeing that across car lots, and car lots being really empty because they're not able to produce the cars because the new cars don't have microchips. Apple is refraining from doing the same rollout they thought for the new iPhone because of microchips. It's the same thing with the suit world. It's the same thing with apparel and things.
Wait, there's microchips in the suits, Erik?
Yeah, right.
Breaking news.
Yeah.
Speedo is microchipping your suit.
To the same extent that cars are dealing with microchip issues, and so are computers and stuff like that. We're dealing with all of that on the swimming side. If we have stuff that we've been out of for a long time, we simply aren't able to keep up with demand. And on top of that, manufacturing facilities getting people back in to man these machines and get things out. And to kind of wind things up together is like, it's just something that we're dealing with, something that everybody's dealing with. And it's the Amazon world that everybody's used to is pointing and clicking and it showing up the next day. It doesn't work that way everywhere else. Even Amazon is probably dealing with supply issues at this point, but just not to where you would see it. And then understand stuff that's coming through is that a lot of places do have product. And I don't know if you're aware of any of the situations that's going on in the ports around the country, but there are stuff sitting in the ocean waiting to get offloaded. There's such a backlog in shipping that things are done and ready. We just can't get them off the ships. And you're seeing other issues too. And it's one thing that you're seeing with some items are going up in cost. And for those of you who aren't aware of that at all, shipping also has gotten really, really expensive. And I don't mean Amazon shipping you stuff. I mean freight, legit containers. So our freight costs and freight costs around the world have gone up 500%.
Holy smokes.
So to give you an idea, if a container was costing $4,000, a container of Speedo stuff coming from wherever in the world to America was costing $4,000. It now costs $20,000 to ship that same container.
Wow.
So we're not the only ones dealing with that. So if you're seeing swim stuff across this, all of a sudden this sweatshirt's more expensive or this pair of goggles has gone up. We're trying not to do the big price increases.
Right.
But you can only mitigate that stuff so much before you have to tweak things. So it's happening. It's there. If you have parents who are upset about their stuff not coming in, we feel it. We get it. It's crappy, but it's all looking like it's starting to get better. Yeah. And it's going to take a few more months, and just be patient. And not everybody lives in the house of Bezos.
Yeah. Well, that's what people tune in here for. They want the global supply chain management talk.
Yeah. Sorry for that little longer diatribe.
No, I think it's really it's actually really, really important. It's it's something that's going on globally, and it is impacting the lives of a lot of people who are participating.
Fortunately, tech suits aren't really affected by that as much as it is. It's all the other big stuff.
Yeah,
that's a very hyper niche product.
It's my t-shirts. So. I haven't gotten my t-shirts, Erik.
All my fault.
But the sweatshirts are awesome. Everybody, seriously, Speedo makes an awesome sweatshirt. I just got
an unsolicited response. I give Chris no money and no credit for anything.
That's right. People who've known me for a long time are like, wow, I never thought I'd live to see the day where Chris is unpaid shilling for Speedo on a podcast. But here we are. Okay. My final talk is, a lot of people are probably expecting us to talk about this. And I'm going to back out from the very specifics of it quite a bit. But there was a mass resignation of coaches at Austin Swim Club earlier this week. Rourke Fink, as well as a couple of coaches who sort of
his head age group coach.
Yeah, his head age group coach, like the sort of backbone coaches of that entire program resigned in unison. And I've probably mentioned it on this podcast before, that I think Connecticut is the worst good state in America, because I want people to understand that, it's not that Connecticut is bad. It's just among the states that aren't, third world countries here in the United States, Connecticut just has a lot of stuff. And I say that as somebody who, my brother lives in Connecticut. I have a brother-in-law and sister-in-law that live in Connecticut. My in-laws are about to move to Connecticut. Okay, so this hits close to home with me, this Connecticut stuff. I'm going to be having to go to Connecticut and facing down people in that state. But even those that live there don't really argue with me when it comes to this. They're like, yeah, actually, it's pretty miserable to travel through Connecticut. So where is this all headed? I think that with these latest mass resignations, Austin is the worst good city for swimming in America. Okay. Austin on paper is an incredible place for swimming. It's in Texas. It's filled with people who definitely have the money and resources to get their kid involved in swimming. And it's, got a booming population. And for some reason, there's a culture, as I see it, as a person looking from the outside, there's a culture building around major swim clubs there that just seems to really suck. And I think Austin Swim Club is an example of this. I'm not a fan of nitro at all. Back in my old social media days, I got into a couple of wonderful flame wars with Mike Caeleb, the guy who runs Nitro. And I just don't agree with a lot of what's happening there. And I think it's too bad because, again, Austin should be a place, if you think like back to 2 weeks ago when we were in between rating Brett Hawk's biceps and talking about, what kind of whey protein he was taking to achieve that. There happens to be a decent mid-major college swim program in Austin, Texas that should at least be a springboard a bit for the local swimming community. And I think it's a shame. I think it's a shame that there isn't more sort of frontline stuff happening in Austin. And I hope that someday this will just be a bad memory and things get straightened out because there's got to be a lot of kids that could really do a lot in the sport of swimming there, that maybe we're not seeing because of the way things are. And I think that's too bad. That's my concluding rant. Oh, I let me just put a bonus one. Erik wasn't expecting this. Mark Schubert retired a few weeks ago. I'm sure everybody's wondering what I think. Do you know what I think? I think it's great. Okay. That's been our podcast for the week. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks everybody for subscribing. Thank you to our 50 YouTube viewers. We love you. We're going to keep putting stuff on YouTube up for you. And I'll see you guys again next week.
Thanks, Chris.